The Alpha's surprise twin heirs. Talia knows hardship her entire life. Abandoned at an orphanage as a child, she is treated like an outcast, unworthy, ridiculed for the wolf inside her that refuses to awaken. The caretakers sneer, calling her defective, useless. The other children, sensing weakness, torment her relentlessly. Loneliness clings to her like a second skin. She got used to it. But she isn't truly alone. Charlotte, her only friend, is the only light in the suffocating darkness. Like Talia, she has a dormant wolf, making them kindred spirits in a world that sees them as broken. They cling to each other for comfort, whispering dreams of freedom under the moonlight, dreaming of a life where they are not defined by what they lack, but by the strength they hold inside. As they grow up, Talia becomes Charlotte's shield, absorbing every punishment, every cruel remark, and every agonizing lesson inflicted upon them. Charlotte is much younger, and Talia cannot bear to see her suffer. The caretakers make an example of her, forcing her to endure harsher treatment, knowing she will take it all to keep Charlotte safe. Bruises fade, but the pain of humiliation lingers. Each strike, each insult only strengthens her resolve, the self-confidence gone. She swears to herself. One day she will escape and take Charlotte with her. Then one summer night the opportunity comes like a whisper on the wind. That night, beneath the pale glow of the moon, Talia seizes Charlotte's trembling hand. "We run now, or we never leave," she breathes. Charlotte was scared, her eyes wide, but she was determined. She nodded her head fiercely with new hope gleaming in her eyes. Talia never forgot that look on her face, the taste of freedom, the taste of a new life. With hearts pounding and breath ragged, they flee into the unknown, running for days, leaving behind the chains of their past, running toward the uncertain promise of freedom. Life outside isn't much kinder, but at least they are free. The world is cold, unwelcoming, and far harsher than they ever imagined. They have no money, no roof over their heads, and nowhere safe to turn. Hunger gnaws at them in the dead of night, their thin clothes doing little to shield them from the biting cold. They sleep in abandoned buildings, huddle together under threadbare blankets, and scavenge for food in the shadows of a world that barely notices their existence. Talia does whatever it takes to keep them afloat. She takes on grueling jobs, washing dishes in grimy diners, scrubbing floors until her hands are raw, hauling boxes in warehouses alongside men who sneer at her slight frame. She swallows her pride, endures the leers, and works herself to exhaustion, all so Charlotte can have a better future. When men try to take advantage of their vulnerability, Talia stands in front of Charlotte, fists clenched, eyes burning with a quiet fury that warns them not to test her. More than once she takes the blows meant for Charlotte, shielding her like she always has, leaving her untouched. Every hardship, every humiliation, she endures for the only person who has ever mattered to her. And after years of struggle, it pays off. Charlotte, with Talia's unwavering support, graduates and becomes a renowned doctor specializing in IVF and artificial insemination. Talia finally finds a job she loves, working as a nanny. She adores children, their laughter a soothing balm to the wounds life has carved into her soul. Their innocence reminds her that not all of the world is cruel. She never had a family, only Charlotte, so she dreamed of a big family with many kids that she would cherish. She cares for twins, the children of a very influential family. Their home is in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in town, a place so luxurious it still feels unreal how some people live. Next door stands an estate shrouded in mystery, the home of an elusive billionaire whose presence lingers like a whisper in the air. She has seen glimpses of him, felt the weight of his gaze in passing, but he remains an enigma. Talia harbors a quiet fascination with the man, though she tells herself it is nothing more than idle curiosity. He is magnetic, imposing, a figure of untouchable power, but she has no room for fantasies. She has a boyfriend, Daniel, a man who, though flawed, represents the closest thing she has to stability. He is not the love she dreamed of, but he is someone, and she clings to the idea of building a future with him. Her dreams shatter when she discovers his betrayal. Daniel has been unfaithful. The moment she sees the incriminating texts on his phone, her stomach churns. Her hands tremble as she scrolls through the explicit messages, the playful whispers of affection meant for someone else. "You're late again," she had confronted him just days before, frustration mounting in her voice. "Work, Talia." He had lied so easily. "Meetings are endless." But now, staring at the proof in her hands, rage replaces heartbreak. The air feels suffocating as she storms into the living room, where Daniel sits, unaware of the fury about to consume him. "You lied to me," she hisses, her voice dangerously calm. Daniel looks up lazily, still not realizing the storm about to hit him. "Talia, what?" She throws the phone at him. "Explain this," she snaps. His face pales, but the pathetic excuses tumble out. "It was just a mistake, babe." "A mistake?" She laughs, bitter and sharp. "You don't accidentally send dozens of messages like this. You don't accidentally betray someone who's given you everything." Daniel stands, his expression shifting to annoyance. "Talia, be reasonable." But she's done. Completely, utterly done. "Be responsible. Get out," she spits. "Get your things and get out of my life." He scoffs, muttering something under his breath, but she doesn't care. She watches as he hurriedly gathers his belongings, slamming the door behind him, leaving only silence in his wake. Her knees threaten to buckle, but before she can fall, Charlotte is there, wrapping her arms around her. "You don't need him, Talia," she says firmly. "You don't need anyone who doesn't value you. You want a baby? We can do artificial insemination. You don't need Daniel for that. We got donors, and you can pick. You deserve so much more than a man who lies to you." Talia takes a shuddering breath, holding onto her friend's words like a lifeline. Because Charlotte is right. She is stronger than this, and she will not let a man like Daniel define her future. Encouraged by her friend's words, Talia starts the process for fertility under Charlotte's careful guidance. But just when she thinks she has moved past Daniel's betrayal, another devastating truth emerges. One evening, Charlotte enters their apartment still in her doctor's coat, her face tense with concern. "Talia, I overheard something today," she says hesitantly, sitting beside her on the couch. "Daniel, he was giving you contraceptives without your knowledge." Talia stiffens, her breath catching in her throat. "What?" she whispers, her hands balling into fists. "I saw the results of your blood work and urine," Charlotte continues, her voice laced with anger. "He wanted to make sure you wouldn't get pregnant, Talia. He never intended to start a family with you." A wave of nausea rolls through Talia. Betrayal sharpens into something deeper, something darker. It isn't just about him cheating, it's about control, about deceit on a level she never thought possible. "He took away my choice," she chokes out, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. Charlotte grabs her hands tightly. "But he doesn't get to take away your future. You're stronger than this. We'll move forward together." Fueled by a renewed determination, Talia pushes forward with the artificial insemination. She would try until she got pregnant. But then, against all odds, the results come in. "You're pregnant," Charlotte announces, smiling warmly. The words feel surreal, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Despite everything, despite all the pain, she has a chance at the life she always dreamed of. She will be a mum soon. Talia grips Charlotte's hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I did it," she whispers. "I'm finally free." Still, there is another small joy in her life. The twins. Always happy and so intelligent. They always greet their charming and mysterious neighbor during their walks, Aldrich Dark Moon. The way he interacts with them melts her heart, the way he kneels to their level, listening to their endless chatter with patience, the way his deep laughter rumbles through the air, making her chest tighten. She watches from a distance, letting herself pretend just for a moment that she belongs in that scene, that the warmth of his gaze might one day land on her the way it does on the children. She closes her eyes and lets herself imagine, two tiny hands clutching hers, their giggles filling the air as they run through a field of flowers. She envisions twin boys with his dark, piercing eyes and her gentle smile, or perhaps a boy and a girl, their hair wild with curls, reaching for her as she scoops them up into her arms. A family of her own, complete, safe, and filled with love. But the dream shatters as reality claws its way back in. She is alone. The man next door is just a distant presence in her life, and the children she longs for are now more than a fantasy. Not anybody's kids but hers and hers alone. And yet, despite her recent struggles with men, she can't deny the way her gaze lingers on him just a little longer than it should. Talia has harbored a secret crush on him for a while. He is magnetic, impossibly handsome, and has a presence that makes everyone else feel insignificant. But she has no illusions. A man like him wouldn't look twice at a woman like her. A poor, single, pregnant woman. Pregnancy exhaustion catches up with Talia fast. One day, while feeling faint, she loses focus, and the twins nearly run into the street. Their frightened parents lash out, and she is fired on the spot. With her pregnancy progressing and no income, anxiety grips her, but Charlotte urges her to take it easy and rest. Charlotte makes more than enough to take care of both of them. "Let me take care of you for a change. You need it," she had pleaded. When Talia goes for a routine checkup at the hospital, Charlotte personally handles her examination, ensuring everything is progressing well. Her entire life changes in an instant. Talia sits anxiously in the examination room, her fingers gripping the edge of the bed. Charlotte squints at the screen, her brows furrowing before a warm smile spreads across her face. "Talia," Charlotte squeals, her eyes shining with excitement. "You're carrying twins." The room tilts, her breath catches in her throat. "Twins," she stammers, her pulse hammering in her ears. She had barely begun wrapping her head around having one baby. How was she supposed to care for two? The weight of the responsibility crashes onto her shoulders, and panic grips her chest. Charlotte, standing beside her, lets out an excited gasp. "Twins? Oh my God, Talia, this is amazing." Talia turns to her, her eyes wide with worry. "Charlotte, I can barely take care of myself, let alone two babies. How am I going to do this?" Her voice wavers, raw and vulnerable. Charlotte grasps her hand tightly, her expression firm. "We are going to do this together. You are not alone in this, Talia. We've survived so much, and we're going to survive this too. These babies are a blessing, and I will be by your side every step of the way." Talia swallows hard, nodding slowly as Charlotte squeezes her hand reassuringly. But just as she begins to process everything, the air shifts. The room suddenly feels smaller, charged with an unexplainable energy. A dominant aura fills the space, sending shivers down her spine. A powerful presence steps in, and her heart stops. Aldrich Dark Moon stands in the doorway, his amber eyes burning as they lock onto her. His nostrils flare, his entire body tenses. His voice is low, deep and edged with disbelief as he murmurs, "You're carrying my child?" Talia freezes, confusion floods her mind. What?" Aldrich strides closer, his golden eyes dark with something unreadable. "You're pregnant with my child?" He sounds as though he is still trying to comprehend the impossible. Talia's heart pounds. This can't be happening. The insemination. The anonymous donor. There is no way. But then it hits her. Aldrich Dark Moon, the elusive billionaire, is a man of power and mystery. He has built an empire, his influence stretching far and wide. But one secret haunts him, his inability to conceive an heir. He ensured his bloodline would not be lost, freezing his sperm as a precaution. But he never imagined fate would take matters into its own hands. He must have ensured his sperm was preserved, but how does he know it's his child? Talia's world spins. A cold sweat breaks out along her skin as the room tilts, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. The air feels too thin, slipping away before she can pull it into her lungs. Her fingers tremble as she tries to ground herself, but her vision blurs. A wave of dizziness crashes over her, and before she can react, her knees buckle. The last thing she hears is Charlotte's startled cry before darkness swallows her. Aldrich Darkmoon never expected his routine checkup to change everything. He had come to the hospital for a simple evaluation, nothing more. But as soon as he stepped into the building, a scent hit him like a lightning strike. His own, the unmistakable pull of his bloodline. His wolf roared to life, demanding he follow the scent, demanding he claim what was his. His heart pounds as he strides down the hall, his heightened senses zeroing in on the source. The scent is strong, so potent it drowns out everything else. When he pushes open the examination room door, the sight before him makes his breath hitch. A fragile human woman, her body weak, lies on the bed getting a paternal echo. But it is her, Talia. And inside her, he can feel it. His pup. How is this possible? A snarl rumbles deep in his chest. His golden eyes darken as he takes in her frail form. She looks exhausted, as though she has been carrying the weight of the world alone. His wolf howls in rage. How could this happen? How could his children be growing inside someone so vulnerable, so unprotected? Who had allowed this? His jaw tightens and he turns his sharp gaze to the woman standing beside Talia, her doctor, her friend. Explain. Now. Charlotte meets his gaze, unfazed by the raw dominance rolling off of him. I don't know how this happened, she admits, folding her arms. The artificial insemination process is precise, and Talia's donor was supposed to be anonymous. There should have been no mix-up. Aldrich's expression darkens further, his patience thinning. Find out. I want names, reports, and every detail on how my seed ended up inside her. His voice is absolute, leaving no room for argument. Without hesitation, he pulls out his phone and dials. Moments later, a tall, striking man with piercing blue eyes steps into the room. Aldrich's beta. Luca, I need you to get to the bottom of this. I want every medical record, every name involved in this procedure. I want answers. Now. Luca nods sharply before disappearing down the hall. The air remains heavy with tension. A soft groan from the bed pulls Aldrich's attention back to Talia as her eyelids flutter open. Her gaze is unfocused at first, but the moment she registers him, panic flashes in her emerald eyes. You, she breathes, pushing herself up weakly. What are you doing here? Aldrich steps closer, towering over her with an intensity that makes her shrink back. I could ask you the same thing, little one, he murmurs, his voice dangerously low. You are carrying my baby. Her breath catches and she instinctively places a hand over her stomach. A bitter laugh escapes her lips. Not baby. Babies, she corrects, her voice laced with exhaustion and frustration. Aldrich stiffens. What did you say? She exhales shakily, locking eyes with him. Twins, there are 2 of them. For the first time, Aldrich is silent, his piercing golden eyes widening slightly. He had already felt an overwhelming sense of possession when he thought she carried one of his pups. But 2? A miracle. An impossibility. His wolf growls possessively inside him, demanding he do everything to protect them. Talia sees the shift in his expression, the raw dominance darkening his gaze. I wasn't well. I lost my job because I almost put the twins of your neighbor in danger, she mutters, as if trying to shift the focus from his reaction. Aldrich crosses his arms, his voice absolute. You are not working anymore. Talia's head snaps up, her eyes blazing. Excuse me? You are carrying my children, Aldrich growls, stepping closer. I thought I could never have children, and now that I do, I will not risk your well-being or the well-being of my children. You will not work. You will be cared for. Protected. Talia glares at him, fire flashing in her eyes. You don't own me. Just because I'm pregnant with your children doesn't mean you get to control my life. Aldrich leans in, his face mere inches from hers. You are carrying my children. That means you are my responsibility, whether you accept it or not. and I will not let you endanger yourself. Or them. Talia's heart pounds in her chest. He is overwhelming, possessive, and terrifyingly dominant. But beneath her fear, a different terror blooms. What if he decides she is unfit to carry his children? What if he takes them from her? Would they rip her babies away the moment they are born? The thought makes her stomach twist, and a cold sweat breaks out along her skin. She can't let that happen. Aldrich watches her carefully before exhaling sharply. You're too weak to be on your own. You're coming with me. What? Talia gasps, her eyes widening. No, You will stay in my home. Aldrich cuts her off, his tone leaving no room for argument. I'll have a guest room prepared for you. You need care, and I will not allow my children to suffer because their mother is too stubborn to accept help. Before she can protest, Aldrich makes the arrangements. He doesn't take her to the pack house, no. He still believes she is human. Instead, he brings her to his private estate, a place far removed from the wolves he rules over. It's grand, intimidating, but undeniably comfortable. For the first few hours, she does her best to avoid him, wanting space to process everything. But it's impossible not to notice how his beta, Luca, keeps slipping up, calling him Alpha more than once. The first time she hears it, she brushes it off, convinced she misheard. The second time, she pauses. But the third time? The third time, she knows something isn't right. That night, she calls Charlotte. Charlotte, she whispers, pacing in the luxurious guest room. Aldrich. They keep calling him Alpha. There's a beat of silence before Charlotte sighs. Talia, you need to sit down. There's something you should know. Aldrich Dark Moon isn't just some billionaire. He's the Alpha King. Talia's breath catches. The Alpha King? The most powerful werewolf alive? Yes, Charlotte confirms softly. But he doesn't know you're a wolf. He thinks you're human. Talia swallows hard, panic rising in her chest. Charlotte, how am I supposed to tell him? Aldrich stands in his study, staring out the massive window that overlooks his sprawling estate. The moon casts an eerie glow, illuminating the turmoil raging within him. He should be elated. His seed has taken root. And not just in one child, but two. His lineage, which he had once believed to be doomed, now had a future. But that future was uncertain, because the woman carrying his heirs was human. His jaw clenches as he pours himself a glass of whiskey, the liquid swirling under the dim light. Luca, he calls, his voice tight. His beta steps forward. Alpha? Aldrich inhales sharply, his wolf pacing restlessly within him. I need to know if this is possible, he says, his voice low and urgent. A human carrying two wolf pups, can her body handle it? Will they even survive? Luca nods. I'll have our best researchers look into it immediately. If this has ever happened before, we'll find out. Aldrich grips the edge of his desk, his fingers pressing into the wood. I've waited too long for an heir, Luca. If there's a risk, I need to know now. I won't lose them. The beta hesitates. And if there is a risk? Aldrich's golden eyes flicker dangerously. Then we find a way to fix it, no matter what it takes. But even as he speaks the words, doubt gnaws at him. Could fate be so cruel as to finally grant him what he desired, only to rip it away? He watches the night sky, his mind restless, his heart unwilling to acknowledge the terrifying thought forming in the depths of his soul. Could his happiness be shattered because a mere human carried his children? The next morning, Aldrich avoids her. He leaves the house early, not willing to face the questions swirling in her eyes or the uncertainty gnawing at his insides. He needs time, to think, to strategize, to prepare for what this means. His wolf is restless, torn between possessiveness and fear. When Talia walks downstairs, she finds a warm, homey scent filling the air. In the kitchen, a chubby, middle-aged woman hums as she prepares breakfast. The woman turns with a warm smile, her sharp but kind eyes settling on Talia. Good morning, dear, you must be hungry. Come sit, the woman offers, gesturing to the table. Talia hesitates before taking a seat. You know who I am? Of course, Quigrean, the woman chuckles, placing a plate in front of her. I raise the, Mr. Aldrich. He trusts me more than anyone. I am here to help you during your pregnancy. My name is Beth. Talia stiffens slightly. There it was again. She wanted to say Alpha, but the woman carries herself like a human, so natural, so at ease. Talia probes gently. He's a complicated man. The woman only smiles. That he is, but he takes care of what is his. Talia narrows her eyes slightly, but the woman doesn't say anything more. It's clear she knows more than she's letting on, but she is loyal to Aldrich. Talia decides not to push further. Instead, she thanks her for the meal and steps outside to get some air, her thoughts weighing heavily on her mind. By the time Aldrich returns in the evening, she is already asleep, or at least, that's what he thinks, until she hears the hushed voices outside her room. She left the house today, the maid whispers to Luca. She's trying to figure things out. She was asking questions. She can't know yet, Luca murmurs back. The Alpha isn't ready. He needs to tell her soon, the woman warns. She's not just any human, and she overheard me earlier. She knows I called him Alpha. Moments later, Aldrich steps into his office where Luca is already waiting. We need to discuss how to talk to her, Luca states. She knows something's off. Before Aldrich can respond, the door opens and Talia walks in. She lifts her chin, her eyes burning with resolve. Fear still lingers in the back of her mind, but she swallows it down. If she hesitates, they might question her more. You don't have to tell me, she says, voice steady. I already know. And I need you to know something too. Aldrich studies her, his golden gaze unreadable. Know what? That you're the Alpha King. She exhales sharply, pushing forward before fear can silence her. But there's something you don't know either. I'm not just some human, I have a wolf, or at least I was supposed to. My wolf is dormant, that's why Charlotte and I live as humans, because the packs never treated us like one of them. They see us as defective. And if you think that too, then tell me now. Because I won't let my children be taken away from me, Alpha or not. For a moment, silence stretches between them, then Aldrich's expression shifts, the cold calculation in his eyes giving way to something else. Something almost intrigued. But there is no hint of rejection, no immediate dismissal of her as weak. You're telling me, he says slowly, that you're a wolf without a wolf? There is curiosity in his voice, but not the disgust she expected. Talia nods. That's why I never told anyone, because wolves like me are treated as if we are weak, as if we are nothing. A slow smirk tugs at Aldrich's lips. You're far from nothing, Talia, and you have no idea what you've just gotten yourself into. The days pass and Talia's pregnancy progresses, her body slowly adapting to the changes that come with carrying two growing pups. She does her best to remain strong, but the weight of uncertainty looms over her like a storm cloud. Every night when she lies awake in the large unfamiliar bed, the same fear gnaws at her. What if she loses them? What if her body isn't strong enough? What if Aldrich decides they would be better off without her? Living under his roof only intensifies the turmoil within her. Being around him constantly, seeing the way his golden eyes flick to her stomach whenever they cross paths, the way his presence fills the house, it all makes her hyper-aware of him. He is a powerful, dominant force, and she knows better than to fall for someone like him. And yet, despite her best efforts, her crush on him only grows stronger. Aldrich, for his part, watches her carefully. He remains possessive, always ensuring she eats enough, rests properly, and avoids stress. But more than that, he finds himself entertained. Talia is stubborn, challenging him in ways no one else dares to. And though she infuriates him with her defiance, there's something undeniably alluring about her fire. He had admired her before when she was the nanny to the twins next door, but now that she is a wolf and in his home, carrying his children, He finds himself looking at her much differently. Their interactions become charged, their encounters inside the house laced with an unspoken tension. A lingering glance here, a brush of fingertips there. One evening she bumps into him in the hallway, her breath hitching as his hands instinctively steady her. His touch is warm, firm, sending a shiver down her spine. He doesn't move away immediately, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that makes her stomach flip. "You should be more careful," he murmurs, his voice deep and slow. I was just going to the kitchen," she stammers, cursing herself for how breathless she sounds. A smirk plays at the corner of his lips. "Why don't you ask Beth? You should rest, little one." She swallows hard and steps away, but the electricity in the air lingers long after she's gone. As the days continue, their relationship remains a push and pull. She is cautious around him, terrified of what it would mean to let herself get close. And Aldrich is beginning to wonder if fate had played a greater role in bringing them together than he originally thought. Why was he so interested in a woman not being his mate? Then one night Talia has a dream so vivid it leaves her breathless. In the dream, Aldrich is behind her, his hands running possessively along her body, touching every inch, his mouth hot against her neck. She feels him claim her, dominate her, whispering things that make her pulse race. She wakes up covered in a sheen of sweat, her body aching in a way she refuses to acknowledge. From that moment on, being around him becomes even more unbearable. Her body reacts differently, a warmth blooming inside her whenever he is near. Every glance, every touch lingers longer than it should. And worst of all, he notices. Aldrich, ever perceptive, catches the way her breath hitches when he's too close, the way she averts her gaze. Flustered, a slow smirk tugs at his lips. He enjoys this, watching her struggle against whatever unspoken pull she feels toward him. His wolf, too, is intrigued, pacing in his mind as if urging him closer. He had always found her fascinating, even before she carried his children, but now there was something even more intoxicating about her defiance. He purposefully leans in a little closer, his voice lower than necessary. "Something wrong, little human?" And he enjoys it. He watches her struggle, secretly amused by her reactions. He even takes advantage of it, purposely brushing against her when they pass in the hall, leaning too close when they speak. One evening, as she waddles into the kitchen, because at this point, waddling is the only way to describe her movement, he smirks. "You're getting rounder by the day," he teases, his golden eyes glinting with amusement. She scowls at him. "That's what happens when you're carrying two pups." "It suits you," he murmurs, his voice softer this time. Talia blinks at him, caught off guard by the rare gentleness in his tone. But before she can say anything, he steps away, leaving her flustered and confused. These little moments between them continue, growing in intensity. One night, as she passes by his study, she hears him say her name, low and deep, as if he's testing how it feels on his tongue. A shiver runs down her spine. What scares her the most isn't Aldrich's growing attention. It's the way she's starting to crave it. One evening, after an almost too intimate dinner where Aldrich had rested his hand on the small of her back longer than necessary, she finally gathers the courage to ask, "What happens after I give birth?" Aldrich leans back in his chair, golden eyes unreadable. "We will move to the pack. It is the safest place for the twins." Talia stiffens. "And me? As what? Their wolf-less surrogate?" Her voice wavers, laced with disbelief. Aldrich's expression remains composed, but the silence is deafening. Her heart shatters. Rage simmers beneath her skin. "You think you can just take them from me? Like I don't matter? Because I don't have a wolf?" "That's not what Aldrich begins, but she is already on her feet, storming away. "I won't let you take my children from me," she yells before slamming the door to her room. That night her mind races, every inch of her screams to get away before he decides she is unfit to be a mother. She won't let him take them. She can't. Just past midnight she slips out, bag in hand. Charlotte is waiting at the end of the estate's long drive. As soon as Talia slides into the car, she exhales sharply. "Drive," Now. Charlotte grips the wheel, her brows furrowed. What happened? Talia's hands tremble. He thinks I'm just going to hand over my babies after they're born. He thinks I have no right to them. Charlotte's jaw tightens. Are you sure? We'll figure this out, Talia. You're not alone in this. The hell I let him take my nephews or nieces. As the car speeds into the night, Talia swallows the lump in her throat. She won't let anyone, not even an alpha, decide her fate. Charlotte brings her to her own apartment, fussing over her like an overprotective mother. She makes Talia tea, the scent of chamomile filling the room as she paces anxiously. I can stay here as long as you need, Charlotte reassures her. We'll figure things out. Talia takes a shaky sip, her fingers curling tightly around the mug. You have work in the morning. I don't want to be a burden. I'll be fine, Charlotte. Charlotte eyes her warily, but after a few moments she nods. Fine, but promise me you'll lock all the doors and call me if anything happens. Talia forces a small smile. I promise. Once Charlotte leaves, exhaustion takes hold, and she drifts into a restless sleep on the couch. But in the dead of night, a sound startles her awake. A crash, the sharp creak of a door being forced open. Fear floods her veins. She barely has time to react before rough hands grab her, dragging her off the couch. A cloth is pressed over her mouth, muffling her scream as she kicks and thrashes against her captors. Mother instincts kicking in. Dark figures loom over her, their voices guttural and full of menace. The alpha doesn't deserve his heir, especially not with a human. Panic seizes her. They know. They know about the babies. They shove her into the back of a van, the door slamming shut with a finality that sends ice through her veins. The engine roars to life and the vehicle lurches forward. Her heart pounds. She can't breathe. Then just as suddenly as it began, the van jerks violently, tires screeching as something massive crashes into its side. A deafening snarl echoes in the night. The scent of power fills the air. The doors are ripped off their hinges, and before her captors can react, a dark blur slams into them with lethal precision. Bones snap. Men scream. The night is filled with chaos and the overpowering scent of blood. Talia blinks through the haze, barely processing the scene before her. Aldrich stands there, his chest heaving, golden eyes glowing like molten fire. His lips curl back in a snarl as he steps forward, his dominance suffocating. He had found her, and he was furious. Talia trembles as he reaches for her, his large hands surprisingly gentle as they pull her free. You thought you could run from me? His voice is a dangerous growl, low and filled with barely contained fury. She should be terrified. She should fight back, but all she can do is clutch his arms, breathless and shaken. Aldrich lifts her effortlessly into his arms. No one takes what's mine. He murmurs darkly. No one. Aldrich takes Talia back to his estate, his entire being consumed by the need to protect her. The security around the property is tripled, guards stationed at every entrance. He makes sure she is never alone, his wolf raging at the thought of her being taken again. That night, as he watches her rest in bed, he finally speaks. I won't take them from you, Talia, he says quietly. I swear it. But we have to keep you safe. The pack house. No, she interrupts, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. I won't go there, I stay here. Aldrich studies her for a long moment before nodding. Then we stay here, but you don't go out alone anymore. She agrees. Days pass and something shifts between them. Talia finds herself drawn to Aldrich in ways she can no longer deny. His presence soothes her when nightmares wake her in the middle of the night. She seeks him out without realizing it, her instincts pulling her closer to him. Maybe it is the babies. She doesn't know. Her body hums when he's near, a deep-seated need awakening inside her. She begins nesting, rearranging the pillows on her bed. Aldrich watches in fascination, his arms crossed as he leans against the doorframe. At first, he doesn't understand why she insists on moving things around constantly, why she mutters about colors, blankets, and the perfect placement for pillows. But then he realizes It's instinct. She's preparing for their pups, ensuring everything is perfect for their arrival. He finds himself amused by her stubborn dedication, especially when she glares at him for merely observing. "You could help instead of standing there like a smug alpha," she huffs one evening, her hands on her hips. His smirk deepens as he steps forward, placing his large hands on her swollen belly. "You're doing just fine on your own, little wolf," he murmurs. But despite his teasing, he always makes sure she has everything she needs, indulging her every whim, though he pretends not to care. Then one night it happens. Talia is lost in a dream so vivid that her body reacts before her mind fully understands. In the dream, Aldrich's hands roam her skin again, his mouth hot against her neck, whispering possessive, wicked things that make her pulse race, his manhood pressing against her back. She moans softly in her sleep, his name slipping past her lips like a plea. Aldrich, standing just outside her door, stiffens at the sound. His golden eyes darken, his wolf surging forward at the way she breathes his name. He should leave, give her privacy, but something primal roots him in place. He listens as she shifts beneath the sheets, another breathless whimper escaping her lips. A growl rumbles in his chest, and then suddenly she jerks awake, gasping, her skin flushed. Her wide, heated eyes meet his, and for a moment, neither of them move. She doesn't push him away when he crosses the room in 2 strides. Instead, she reaches for him, needing his warmth, his touch, the reality of him to drown out the ache left by her dream. Aldrich doesn't hesitate 1 second. He kisses her deeply, reverently, his hands careful over her rounded belly. He worships her body, kissing her everywhere, touching her only to please her, never asking for anything in return. It's slow, sensual, and deeply intimate. When she finally shatters in his arms, he holds her close, vowing silently that he will never let her go. From that night on, Aldrich gets more possessive and caring. He is there through every pain, every discomfort, every sleepless night, and when the time comes, when the contractions start, he is the one holding her hand, worried, growling at anyone who dares to come close to her. Charlotte arrives just in time to deliver the twins at home. The air is thick with tension, the room filled with the sounds of Talia's labored breathing and Aldrich's low growls of frustration. He is not used to feeling powerless, but watching Talia in pain, unable to do anything, is unbearable. His hands clench at his sides as Charlotte works, her brow furrowed in concentration. Talia cries out, gripping Aldrich's hand with surprising strength, and he instantly kneels beside her, murmuring reassurances, his golden eyes wild with protectiveness. "You're doing great, little wolf. Just a little more." But as the minutes stretch on, panic flickers in Charlotte's expression. The second pup isn't coming as quickly as the first. A sheen of sweat beads on her forehead as she adjusts her position. "Talia, you need to push now." I can't," Talia gasps, exhaustion weighing down on her. Her body trembles violently. Aldrich's wolf snarls in response to her distress, and for the first time in his life, fear grips him. "You can," he growls, his voice a command. "You are strong. Our pups need you. I need you." With one final cry, Talia finds the strength to push again, and finally the second baby's cries fill the room. Aldrich exhales sharply, pressing his forehead against hers as Charlotte carefully swaddles the infants. Relief washes over him as he stares at his newborn children, 2 boys, little copies of him, his chest tightening with an emotion he never thought he would experience. Pure, unfiltered love. Then, just as he thinks the storm has passed, an unexpected surge of energy crackles through the air. Talia gasps, her back arching as an unseen force swirls around her. The room stills as golden light engulfs her, and before their very eyes, her form shifts. A sudden, blinding pulse of energy fills the room. Talia gasps, her body arching as magic swirls around her. Charlotte stumbles back, her eyes wide with shock, hands trembling as she clutches a cloth to her chest. Aldrich's breath catches, his wolf stirring violently inside him as he watches the raw power crackle around Talia, like golden fire. "What is happening?" Charlotte whispers, awe-stricken. Aldrich doesn't answer. He can't. His instincts scream that something monumental is unfolding, something ancient and primal. His grip tightens on their newborns as his eyes remain locked on Talia, his heart hammering with a mix of fear and reverence. This was no ordinary shift. This was something else, something divine. Before anyone can react, her form shifts, fur bursting from her skin, her dormant wolf finally awakening in the wake of childbirth. Everyone stares in stunned silence as a beautiful, powerful she-wolf stands before them. Aldrich is the first to step forward, his voice filled with awe. Talia. But before anyone can react further, Talia's body wavers, her legs shaking from the sheer exhaustion of childbirth and the overwhelming force of her long-dormant wolf finally awakening. Her glowing emerald eyes meet Aldrich's, and in that instant, something clicks into place. A bond unlike anything she's ever felt ignites between them, raw and electric. Recognition slams into her with the force of a crashing wave. Aldrich isn't just the father of her children. He is her mate. Aldrich stiffens as the realization strikes him at the same time. His golden eyes widen, his wolf roaring in triumph. He had sensed something about her all along. But now there is no doubt. She is his. She was always meant to be his. Talia lets out a weak gasp as her body trembles violently. The strain is too much. Her limbs give out, and just as she shifts back into her human form, Aldrich lunges forward, catching her before she can collapse. Talia, he breathes, holding her against his chest. She is burning up, her skin damp with sweat, but she is alive. She looks up at him, her eyes clouded with exhaustion, yet there is something softer there, something vulnerable. We're mates? She whispers, barely able to believe it. Aldrich tightens his grip on her, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Talia, we are. A tear slips from the corner of her eye, but before she can say anything else, Aldrich presses a kiss to her forehead, his arms wrapping protectively around her. For the first time in his life, he has everything he never thought he could. An heir, a mate, and a future he never dared to dream of. And he will protect them with everything he has.